What role does intuition play as a parent of a PDA child or teen? Hi, I'm Casey, founder of At Peace Parents, and I've helped hundreds of parents stabilize their home and find peace while parenting a PDA child or teen. So today I want to talk about a topic that is a little bit more woo-woo than I normally talk about, because I am often talking about data and logical frameworks and things like that, but today I really want to talk about intuition. So I'm going to start with a story. I'm going to tell you how I understand and define intuition. I'm going to give you a couple examples of how my intuition worked when my son was younger and before I knew about PDA or even what neurodiversity and neurodivergence were. Then I'm going to talk about the pattern that I've seen of intuition among the parents that I work with in the program that I run. And then I'm going to plant some final seeds for you about how I think about and what I believe to be true about intuition, and of course follow your intuition as to whether it resonates for you. So I'm going to start with a story from when my PDA son Cooper, who is now 9.5, was around the age of 3.5. Okay, so at that time we only had one child, and we lived right outside of Washington, D.C., inside the Beltway, but in Maryland, in a place called Hyattsville. And we had a teeny little house, and I would take the metro every day, a 45-minute commute to downtown D.C. to do my job at the research nonprofit where I worked, and I would often feel a sense of dread on the way home when it was my night to care for Cooper. And my husband and I, because of the level of intensity that we experienced just being with Cooper and his constant need for one-on-one attention and signals of nervous system safety, we would switch off and on. So one night I would be completely in charge of putting him down, and my husband would actually stay out of the house, and then we'd switch. So there was a period of time around the age of 3 when I would come home, I would pick him up from his daycare, I would take him home. The daycare people would say, he had a great day, he had so much fun, all the things, he's a leader, he's excited, he has all these friends. We would walk in the door, and he would immediately start to be agitated, aroused, seemingly like disconnected, and any interaction that I would have with him of like, oh, why don't we play this game, or why don't we eat a snack, it would tip him off, and he would start to what I now understand as a panic attack, but it was just screaming and like manic motion and destruction, and sometimes trying to run out the front door. So I would never know what to do in these situations or understand what was happening. Like, why was this happening, especially when he seemed to have a great day at daycare and seemed totally typical and fine. So, I started needing to carry him up the stairs and bring him into his room, and I would put him in his crib because I needed to contain him in some way so he didn't get hurt or run out the front door or smash things or smash me. So day after day after day on my nights, and my husband too, but this is my experience, he would spend an hour and a half just screaming. And when I would try and soothe him, I would say, it's okay, or like, let's have a snack, or, what's wrong? I would be trying to figure it out. I would be naturally trying to stop whatever pain was causing this that I couldn't see. It would escalate him even more. And so I learned to, not try and I had a phone call, but I'm back. So I would learn to, if I tried to soothe him, it would activate him even more. So I would lay in the dark bedroom. I would turn off the lights, not completely, like you could still have some light coming in the window upstairs. I would lay on the ground, and just like tears would stream down my face because it seemed like I had no capacity to support him, right? So I would just lay on the ground, crying and crying until eventually he would peter himself out, and I wouldn't understand what had happened. And this went on for months. And then one day I had this like ping of an idea that was like, tell him everyone that's ever loved him. So I got up and I like was next to the crib and I started just saying, Mommy loves you, Daddy loves you, Granny loves you, Nana loves you, your preschool teachers loved you. And I just kept naming the people that loved him. And, you know, it didn't stop the screaming or the manic behavior right away, but it diminished it in a way that made me think, oh, this actually had an impact. It actually wasn't making it worse at the very least, and there was something that I could do. And these months came and went without any explanation, right? Like it went on for a period of months and then it sort of stopped, right? And then he, like a year later, went into burnout, but it was very confusing to me. But I'm pointing out that moment of intuition because what did I intuit? I intuited that anything that without being able to name it or have the logic, which I now do, and that's why I'm sharing it with you, because now, you know, 6.5 years later, I understand in retrospect and put language to the logic of what happened so I can share with you, but I did not have it at the time, and so it was intuition, where it was like, okay, any attempt at me soothing is going to activate his perception of threat and nervous system because he's going to perceive I'm trying to make something happen, right? There's an agenda or an expectation. And when I said, you know, this person loves you, this person loves you, I was intuitively using declarative language and providing signals of nervous system safety in the way that like my body intuition told me to do it. And I'm not naming this because I think there's something special about me. I actually think that this is true for all of you. All of you who are here watching, all of you who are here on this page, all of you who are listening to this podcast, I believe that all of you have had a series of these moments when your intuition kicked in. And unfortunately, especially for us as parents, as PDAers, we are experiencing so much feedback that is counter to our intuition. We cease to believe it. We cease to listen to it. Okay? So I want to tell you how I think about intuition because it is a little bit of a like squishy concept and something that like my advisors in my doctoral degree would be like, yeah, you can't talk about that as like a variable because you can't measure it, right? You can't see it with your own two eyes. But I am no longer in academia. I'm here with you, so we can conceptualize it however we want. So when I first started thinking about intuition, I didn't think of myself as very intuitive because I was like, well, I didn't realize he was neurodivergent. I didn't realize he was autistic fully. I didn't know anything about neurodiversity, and I didn't have this aha moment of clarity where it's like, oh, he's PDA, right? So the intuition I like to think of as bodily sensations, emotions, or thoughts that come from seemingly a place of nowhere, not necessarily a place where you can put logic or language to it. It's just this sensation in the body, a gut instinct, a thought, a knowing. That's a breadcrumb on your path that you can follow or not. And often that breadcrumb doesn't make sense within the context of our experience in the society we live in, right? Where it's like, well, there's all these strategies that you can apply to stop a screaming child, and I tried all of them and none of them worked, right? So it's like moving away from thinking to yourself, I'm doing it wrong, into like, what is my body or this emotion or thought telling me that maybe I can follow as the next breadcrumb on the path to more peace or clarity. Okay, so I'm going to give you two other examples from my life, and then I'm going to go into some of the patterns I've seen from working with all the parents I've worked with. So I remember this small breadcrumb of clarity that I had post my son's burnout, or like in the recovery period when we moved from Washington, D.C. to Michigan, and we had a trampoline and we still have a trampoline in our backyard and swings. And we were also doing OT. And I remember how many hours I had to spend bouncing my son's body on the trampoline or swinging his body for him, right? It was almost as if he wasn't spinning, swinging, roughhousing, crashing, or jumping, or having someone do that for him, he was perceiving discomfort, pain, or threat in his body. It was so confusing to me through the PDA and sensory lens, because it's like he would be like, let's go on the trampoline, or like trampoline, and I'd go out there and he wouldn't jump, right? I'd have to bounce his body for him for hours, or I would swing him for hours. He wouldn't pump or move his body himself. But I remember there was this thought that passed through my mind through the hours of observing this and sort of trying to understand the paradoxes, and like, well, if he needs proprioceptive input, why won't he just jump? And I remember thinking to myself, like, ugh, I'm getting dizzy just like spinning him and constantly like moving his body. I'm feeling this like dysregulation in my body. And I remember thinking, or the thought came, that was like, the way I feel when I'm swinging or spinning or jumping too much is exactly the way his body feels when he's not doing that. And so of course he's going to seek this movement because it's actually relieving whatever pain, discomfort, nausea is in his body in the opposite way of me. And that's called conflicting access needs, and it's really difficult as a parent, but we're just talking about like intuition, right? And so I didn't understand PDA. I was just learning about sensory from all the time I spent in his occupational therapy and with the different OTs that we worked with. But it was like this moment of knowing, of observation, and like of being like, yes, there's something there, right? There's something there, even if it doesn't make sense according to the logic of what my OT is teaching me or the experts are saying. But again, like, we don't trust ourselves when we have these moments. The next example, it's more about like a bodily sensation that I had in reaction to what was suggested I did with my son. So I studied, like I bought the DVD. This was a while ago, but I bought the DVD, I bought the books for 1, 2, 3 Magic. I talked to the pediatrician about it, which is really like you're just counting down, and then you put the kid in timeout if they don't start to do what they're supposed to do or don't stop what they're doing. And they're supposed to be conditioned to learn, like, you have to do whatever I say, or you need to stop doing what I'm asking you to stop doing. And so I started employing this consistently and intensely, and I would put him in a timeout, and he would start screaming and lay on his back and kick the door, and it was a scream like he was in pain, and then he would also turn off the light or intentionally hurt himself, and then he would be like, I'm scared, I hurt myself, and he would turn off the light in order to be scared. And I was like, I actually would feel like pain in my chest and pain in my body, and my heart would hurt, but I would go against it because I was like, no, you have to be consistent. The book said if you're not consistent, the pediatrician said if you're not consistent, it won't work, right? So I was going against my intuition, which ultimately won out, or else I wouldn't be here. We would be talking about a very different situation. So what's happening with parents of PDAers, and is it that they don't have strong intuition, or is it that their intuition is there, but it's mixed up with fear and additionally trauma from being constantly gaslit and told that what we are intuiting and observing is not actually true? Because intuition is here to tell us what's true, what's actually true, regardless of what's in the DSM-5, or regardless of what some expert with a bunch of acronyms after their name says, or regardless of what a book says. Because intuition is here to tell us what the truth is, right? So parents intuit that their kid needs more screen time. They intuit that their kid maybe doesn't need to sit at the table and they might need to sit somewhere else to eat their food.